My guest today is Philip Atkinson, an organizational coach, beekeeper, and the author of Be Wise 12 Leadership Lessons from a Busy Beehive. Welcome, Philip.
Thank you, Céline. Nice to be here.
I have many questions already just from the title of your book, which I'm sure is not surprising. But before we get into that, I'm going to ask the question that I always start with, which is the name of the podcast is Leading Through Crisis. What comes up for you, or what does it mean to you when you hear that phrase?
First of all, I'm going to say crisis is just a phase. We need to be good leaders at all phases. And just because it's a crisis, we don't need to be different. We need to be good humans with good leadership skills in everything that we do. So that's my mantra, and that's what I'd love to explore a little bit deeper today.
Yeah, I'm definitely up for that. And I love the way you phrased good humans with good leadership skills because wouldn't the world be a different place if it was good humans with good leadership skills in all of those leadership
A
positions?
simple request, doesn't it?
It does. And that's why it stands out to me because it's a very simple way of phrasing it. And yet it's not, it's clearly, if you look at the world around us, it's clearly not easy. We've all worked with leaders who are not good people, good humans with good leadership skills.
I think what's interesting already is leadership is not taught very well. We kind of inherit leadership from other leaders, when we're growing up, or different schools, or different, first jobs, second jobs, serious jobs. Leadership actually needs a lot of thinking about. And it also needs to kind of challenge old models. The world is changing, it's evolving quickly. And as leaders, we need to evolve quickly. And just one thing sparked by your question already about leadership in crisis is we can't pretend to be a leader.
Mm,
We can't pretend to be anything. We actually, all we've got, which is beautiful, is ourselves. And we work with organizations all around the world to help leaders be more themselves, but with more skill. Because you
mhm.
can't change who you are, not really, not a lot, but you can acknowledge who you are, including weaknesses and development areas, and then use all of that self, but with more skill. And then we can have some fun in improving quality of life for everybody.
I have, there's like five different things I want to ask. I'm going to ask this question because I have thoughts on it, which I'm always curious and I never want to assume that my thoughts on something are the truth. So, acknowledging that I have an assumption that I'm hopefully not going to lean too much into in the question. From your experience working with leaders around the world in a variety of ways, what is it that holds people back from being themselves, from leading in a way that's not inherited
Yeah.
from where, the leaders in their organization, the people around them, whatever it is? What is that? Where's that tension coming from?
This is this is thank you, Celine. This is a deep and interesting question already. I'm going to pick up on one aspect first,
Yeah,
and that is I'm going to go a little bit further back.
please.
So organizations have evolved to deal with complexity, basically. And the Industrial Revolution 150 years ago created great big machines of organizations, and they controlled things. They controlled manufacturing, they controlled time, they controlled what individuals did. And we learnt about control and command and control. And actually, in many organizations, for 150 years until today, leadership has been about command and control. And that's what a lot of people have grown up with. And now the world has changed. We're not great big machines making things in a mechanistic way. We are living organizations that need to evolve and breathe and move and respond like a living organization rather than a machine. And I don't think anyone, no matter how clever they are, can command and control everything. So actually, being a leader is not about commanding and it's not about controlling. You actually need to hire really good people to bring their best skills to solve problems. One person can't do it. But we are stuck in the mental framework and mental model of behavior. And there's a tension because things are evolving at the moment. But there is a tension where some leaders think now that I've been promoted to being the leader, I need to know all the answers. And I
Hmm.
need to command and control and restrict and monitor and assess and measure. And I don't think that's the way forward.
I have said many times that we need to, I don't know how we do this. I'm saying we, global we, universal we, but we need to shift the mentality that a leader has all the answers. No single person in any situation at any point in time has all the answers. So why is there pressure on leaders to be the sole source of answers, decisions, whatever? It is reinforcing a system that does not work.
It's fundamental. Well, the world has become more complicated. So we
Yeah.
can't control complexity. We need to embrace complexity. We need to be curious about complexity. We need new ways of thinking to solve old problems or new
Yeah.
problems. So actually leadership is actually about a behavior, and it's a way of thinking and a way of asking questions and a way of being curious and a way of being listening. And it's absolutely about letting go of having to know the answers.
Yeah. I wish we could instill that in more humans as a default that
I'm
we
doing
don't.
my best.
I appreciate
this
that.
this has become my life's work all around the world. Is I fundamentally believe that everyone deserves to be led well. And therefore leaders have a responsibility to be good leaders, which means being a good human with skills. That's become my life's work. I'm doing my best.
Well, I appreciate that, and please keep doing it because it really is, we need more of it. We need more space for leaders to have that space, quite frankly, to have that space to be good humans and to lead in meaningful ways, you know? Okay. Again, I have 1,000 questions, but I want to get into some of what's in your book, but I'm going to start with the background of it because tell me about linking beekeeping with leadership.
I'm going to hold up a copy first of all, just as a
Please,
reference point. Be
please.
wise. 12 leadership lessons from a busy beehive. There's a little bit of a story. I've worked in big organizations worldwide, and I love studying. I studied psychology and change and transformation and coaching, and that was my work. That was my work thing. At the weekend, I wanted to study something completely different from work, and I joined a bee club to study beekeeping. It's a very hands-on, practical thing, and it's academic.
I just have to say, I did not even know bee clubs existed. So already I love everything about this. Please continue.
It's lovely. Well, actually, I'm based in Switzerland and live in rural France, and actually, it's called the Syndicat d'Apiculteurs. So it's a French club in a little hut in a forest, and great. I was happy. I had my work study and I had my home study, nothing to do with each other. Now, a beehive, of course, is a very complex organization where tens of thousands of individuals work towards a single beautiful goal. And one day, I'm sitting outside my office, and outside my office, I'm waiting to get the bus. And the building is a 4-story building, and there are 4 floors inside. And and there's a small front door, and it's a hot summer's day, and people are coming and going out of a small door at the front, and they're carrying briefcases with data and ideas and experience. And inside it's noisy, and inside everyone's moving and they're busy and they're talking, and you can't at first understand what they're doing. And the output, the outcome from the work was amazing. It happened to be a medicine company making cancer treatments. What
Mm.
an amazing product. And I sat there thinking about my bees and thinking, oh my God, what an amazing metaphor. And it hadn't hit me until then. And as soon as I saw this, I thought, oh my goodness, here's something. And I started using stories about the bees inside the organization to actually help with difficult conversations. We'd talk about conflict, I'd talk about the bees first. We'd talk about decision making, I'd talk about the bees. We'd talk about the career planning and matrix management and leadership and decision making. And the beekeeping became a fascinating metaphor to open up better quality conversations. And
Mm.
that's how it all started.
That is fascinating. And I love when we're able to tie things together in unexpected ways, right? And so you've written a book that is tying leadership and beekeeping together. And by the way, your book is absolutely beautiful. And I see that and I go, I, I don't know a ton about bees. I know they're important. I understand it's a complex hive. I don't know a ton about the day to day, how they work, etc. But I see those two together and I'm like, okay, I mean, I know enough to be like, that kind of makes sense, even without all the details.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you know, when things tie together, when there are metaphors that you're like, yeah, that makes sense, obviously, it's always fascinating to me when you're the person that brought them together because why was this not always this way? It's kind of the thing, right? Like, how were we not always thinking this? So tell me a little bit. I'm very curious what some of the specific stories, links,
Mhm.
ties between beekeeping and leadership that made this reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. In the book is structured across 4 seasons of the year: spring, summer, autumn, winter. And in each of those, there are 3 chapters, so there are 12 topics. And I'm just going to call out one first, and then we can dive into others.
Of course.
And look, I'm not pretending we should all be like bees. The bees is it's a metaphor for something. So I don't want us to be, acting and behaving like bees. And the first lesson is actually something to learn not from the bees.
Great.
That is, and there's a phrase, as busy as a bee. Now, bees work 24/7. So in the summer, the female worker bees, which is what I'm talking about primarily, the female worker bees live for about 32 to 33 days. They work non-stop. They don't sleep 24/7. They're working in the hive. They're out flying. They're busy making honey. They're busy building. They work non-stop, and then they die of exhaustion.
Oh my God.
And that's it. Bang, out like a
Wow.
light. Now let's just come to organisations now. I have a bit of fun with this. I now work as an independent coach, and we have a business, and we go into clients, and it's really fun to say to people at work, how are you? And they go, I'm fine, thanks. I'm busy. I'm busy flying, traveling, going to a conference. I'm busy with the budget planning. So it's always, I'm busy something. And it's really interesting to hear how busy is a badge of honor.
Hmm.
My mantra is no, no, let's not be busy. Wouldn't it be great if someone said, I'm great, thanks. I've spent the morning trying to solve a customer problem that we've never really gotten deep into.
Mm.
Or, how are you? I'm great, thanks. I've taken the morning off to go and, take my kid to the doctors or whatever. And I've been thinking about some of the big planning problems. I've been thinking about new innovation or new products. We reward the wrong things.
Mm.
So so chapter one, don't be as busy as a bee. Stop and pause and think a little bit harder about the bigger problems and make the world a better place. That's the first thing.
Do you, if you don't have t-shirts with that on them, you need to have them, Philip, because that needs to be your merch. Because, and I say that truly, because even inside of where the inspiration, where the stories of this book came from for you, is about not being as busy as a bee. It's about having time in your personal life to do something different, interesting, engaging. So it's not just busy because I'm sure we can all find things to work on to fill time and be busy. Whereas this started for you, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but from what it sounds like, it started for you from I'm interested in this other thing that is clearly passionate about, learned a lot from, that is filling my time, filling my cup up in a positive way, not in a, oh no, I have another thing I have to do, checkbox busy way.
Do you want another topic? Another.
Absolutely do.
So I'm just picking at random from the 12 chapters.
Yeah.
I'm drawn, as we're talking, I'm drawn to chapter 7, which is about sensing the system.
Hmm.
Again, every chapter starts with about the bees or the beekeeper or the bee system. As I'm a beekeeper, on a lovely summer's day, beautiful meadow, there might be an apple orchard and flowers. As I approach the beehive, and I might be taking the lid off to put my hand in to harvest honey. So I
Mm.
need to go and do a job, a task. I have a task to do. As I approach the hive, I could take the lid off and put my hands in and start work. But what I encourage everyone to do, and what I need to learn to do better as a beekeeper, is to slow down and pause first, just for a second, and use all of my senses. So if I listen to the beehive, if a beehive is happy, it makes a lovely bee flat noise. If a beehive is stressed, now on a beautiful summer's day with a blue sky, there might be a thunderstorm coming, as there often is on a hot summer's day. And I can't, as a human, I can't see the thunderstorm, but the
Right.
bees can sense it. The bee can sense the change in atmospheric pressure, and the bees are stressed. And if I listen, if the bees are happy, it's a B flat. If the bees are stressed, it's a higher octave and it's a higher note. And I can tell just by pausing and listening if the bees are stressed or not. If they're
Mm.
stressed, don't take the lid off.
Right.
But I could also smell if the bees are stressed or not. Because when the bees are happy, they're making honey, and when they're stressed, they stop making honey and they make propolis, which is a protein bee glue. It's very, very bitter, and it reinforces the hive. So I can actually smell if they're happy or not. I can see if they're stressed or not, because if they're happy, they're working smoothly, and there's a lovely fluid motion to what they're doing outside the hive. If they're stressed, it's a real stressed staccato movement. They look stressed, but
Yeah.
I just need to pay attention. Um, there we are. So we've got sound, we've got smell, we've got noise. Use your senses. Now, if they're stressed, don't take the lid off. you know, Come back later or tomorrow. Now, I'm playing with this, but at work, I'm not going to say smell your meetings, but at work, just spend a little bit more time noticing what is happening. If I'm going to ask my boss for a pay rise, pick your moment.
Hmm.
Notice if your boss is stressed and don't take the lid off and ask your boss for a pay rise.
Hmm.
But I'm also joking, but at a major organizational transformation level, pay more attention to the system.
Hmm.
What are the reactions? What is happening? What is being triggered? What is being said? And more importantly, what is not being said? And really, we encourage leaders to have a greater sense of EQ, emotional quotient, or awareness, or just sensing the system so you don't get stung. I think that's good lessons for anybody.
I think so there's two things that came to mind as you were saying that. One of them is I wish when people were giving feedback that they did more of that sensing of the system and sensing of the other party involved. Because I think often, sorry, go ahead, you're nodding. So,
Sorry, I'm just completely
yeah,
agreeing.
okay.
Yeah,
Because I have seen, and I'm sure you have as well, but I think a lot of times people step into feedback conversations from their perspective, right? So they need to give, it's usually people giving people feedback. That's often the impetus, but they need to say something to someone else and they need to say it. And so they're going to say it. And that is the focus from their perspective. And they're not as focused on is the other person in the right headspace to receive this? Have we set
yep,
this up in such a way where they can receive it? Am I really saying this in a way that is about them and not about me sharing my opinion? I could be on a soapbox the next 4 hours about that. But I think
yeah.
of feedback conversations and like what an opportunity to sense the system.
I'll join you on your soapbox, Céline. I completely agree. There's a chapter about feedback. Feedback. How can we have evolved for 150 years and still be so bad in corporate society at feedback? Fundamentally, I mean, there's one basic question to ask first: is can I give you some feedback now? Or
Thank you.
because or shall we do it tomorrow or later? Let me just say I've done a board presentation about the budget for next year, and I'm coming. Say that's what I've delivered,
Yeah.
and I'm just leaving the meeting, and my boss says, "Can I give you some feedback?" The answer is probably no, not right now.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
not now. I've just come off presenting to the board. I'm not
Yep.
in a place to receive feedback right now. I'd love to receive feedback tomorrow or over a coffee or a bit later. But the
Yes.
question is, can I give you feedback now, or is there a better time?
Yep.
That's a
Could not
basic.
agree. It seems so simple And yet it is so often overlooked. There is a leader that I've worked with, and when I tell you the number of people who refer to this leader when they're like, this is why they're so great, and it is because they ask that question. It is a game changer and people notice it. It's wild to me that it's not more commonly asked. And by the way, that the people who are being asked that question don't feel empowered to say not right now. That's also part of the problem.
Yeah,
Because it's okay to say actually not right now, and it's also okay to say like if when you get feedback, if it's something that is just it's okay to say thank you for that. I'm not, I'm not working on that's not in my like
yeah.
whatever version of it work, but it's okay to say thank you and that's not my highest priority. And yet, here we are in a place where that is not encouraged as much as it should be.
Feedback is so complicated, and it's such an important. When done well, it's so powerful. When done badly, it's so terrible, and it's often done badly.
Yeah.
And I loved your very first comment about it, which is it's not about the person giving the feedback.
Yep.
It has to be for the development and the benefit of the person receiving it, and they
Yep.
have to receive it in the right condition to receive feedback for it to be useful.
I the question the checkpoint I have anyone I've worked with unfortunately who listens to this podcast will know this is that the first thing I always have them check is this feedback your opinion that you just need to share or is it actually to the benefit of the other person? And if it's to the benefit of the other person, then because you want them to do well and you want them to then you need to think before you have any conversation about what it is you want to say and the impact you want it to have. And if it's your opinion, don't share it. If it's just, I would have done this better, that's not feedback.
I hear you. Yes, yes, yes.
I was gonna go into the a bigger system
Hmm.
conversation, but because this feedback, you said there is something in the book about feedback, I am curious how feedback and bees are linked specifically, rather than me going down another rabbit hole of the system.
Well, here it goes. So actually, a beehive is a living organic system. So it moves, it evolves, it changes. Let me link that to communication because that's actually part of feedback, and
Yeah,
it's about messages being received and understood and acted upon.
absolutely.
Have you heard about a thing called a waggle dance?
So
Does that ring a bell?
Despite my lack of knowledge of bees, I don't know anything about it, but I have heard the term.
Okay, well, I'm just going to go a little bit deeper.
Please.
Let's go back to a beautiful spring day and let's think about an apple tree in full blossom. So that could be 500,000 white flowers all coming out at the same week before Easter. When one bee finds a source of pollen like that, it's a gold mine. And one bee finds it and then comes back to tell the rest of the hive. And that's one bee telling 55,000 other bees. And first of all, the bee comes back covered in pollen, so there's a visual cue.
Yeah.
And then the bee does a waggle dance. And this was the guy that invented this, discovered it, won a Nobel Prize. And the bees dance in the figure of eight, and the central axis of the figure of eight tells the other bees how many degrees away from the sun it is. So that gives you the direction. And then
Oh.
the energy that the bees put in, how vigorous they dance this figure of eight, tells the bees how far away it is and how good the source of pollen. So, in terms of, the bee comes back and tells that message. Now, like feedback or good communication, it's completely worthless unless it's understood and acted upon. Anyway, there are bees at the front door noticing this, and the bees go, I'm going to go and look. So they go for a second opinion. So a few, not many, a few more bees go. They follow the direction to the sun, the waggle dance. They follow how far. They find the pollen, and they come back covered in pollen, and they do the dance, and they repeat it, and it's a whole feedback mechanism. And by then, there's a few more bees and a few more. And bearing in mind, there are lots of other decisions taking place because there's lots of other bees going to other sources of pollen. But if this is a powerful one, the message needs to be consistent and repeated and understood, and then more bees go and come back and tell the same message. And eventually, an entire beehive all go to the same source of pollen. They've had 10 million years to get this right. So bees have been on Earth a lot longer than us clumsy humans.
Hmm.
And over 10 million years, the bees know if they all pollinate one tree, it's more efficient. And then they all pollinate a second tree, and then they all pollinate a third tree. It's really fascinating how, but it's good communication.
Hmm.
And what's beautiful now, if you start to think about communication inside an organization, the bees doing this waggle dance, it doesn't happen in daylight at the front of the hive. It happens in darkness in the center of the hive. And Nobel Prize guy, it wasn't, I don't think it was well enough appreciated. All of this communication happens in the noise, in the dark. And that's a bit like being at work. We might
Hmm.
receive hundreds of emails. Just because we've received one email from the CEO about a new transformation doesn't mean we've all understood it. It doesn't mean we can retell the story. It doesn't mean we support it. It doesn't mean we can even remember receiving the bloody email.
Hmm.
So communication inside an organization as part of transformation or change or anything, it needs to be clear, it needs to be consistent, it needs to be repeatable, and it needs to happen in the context of all of the other noise that's going on. It's super fascinating. It really is. The bees are good at this stuff, and there's a lot that we can be more thoughtful about our own
Yeah.
communication inside a big organization with lots of people all busy doing other stuff.
Well, and did I hear you correctly that there are 55,000 bees? Is that like, was that an exaggerated number?
No, no. The bee population changes over the course of the summer. At the height of the summer, when they're busy, there's 50, 60, 70,000 bees in one hive. Yes.
I thought I was like, I must have misheard that. I did not. So the reason that that stuck in my mind is because that is a lot of bees to communicate this with. Way more than most organizations are trying to communicate to people. Like
Yeah, yeah,
significantly more. And they manage to do it inside of all of that busyness. So
yeah.
why can't we?
We need to be clear and consistent, and the message needs to be received as well as it's not just sending a message. It's is the message received, which comes back to sensing the system and comes back to is the organization in a point in time when it's receptive to these messages.
Yeah. Okay. So I actually have a question about that, and I'm gonna give the context of why I'm asking and then ask it about bees, but I'm not saying we have to only stick to bees. So the often not, in my experience, and even in small organizations, definitely in larger organizations, that check of is the message received is often overlooked, right? It is, I have told you something, you have been told something, therefore the assumption is that you received it and it is understood. And this happens in meetings. We're setting up a project, we're talking about it, and we're assuming that we have the same expectations and we're going about the same thing. And oftentimes, when we come back together, in fact, even if there's a handful of people in the room, we have all understood different things. So, context from this is kind of my experience. I want to acknowledge that in asking the question of clearly, the bees have figured out how to confirm that the message has been received and not just told repeatedly or told once. So, whether it's from bees or your experience, but I'm curious, one, how can we do this better? Do you have any lessons from bees, lessons from your own experience? And how can people stop just assuming that the message is received?
I'm going to take this back to the beginning where we talked about being good humans with good skill. Let's not
Great.
pretend. Let's pretend we're not a CEO robot just sending stuff. So you need to be receptive and listen, and as we've talked already about sensing the system and listening and noticing and appreciating what is happening in the organization, and that means probably leaving the top office and going to talk to people in the elsewhere in the organization as to what is happening, what is being received. But I'm actually going to call out bigger thing that I think is important. That's
Please.
and it's to do with cycles, and it's taken me all my career to realize this, and it's the most simple thing. Everything in life has a beginning and a middle and an end. A meeting has a beginning, a middle, end. A feedback comment has a beginning, a middle, end. A career, a beginning, a middle, end. A new project, a new initiative, a new transformation. It has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. And let's just focus on a meeting first of all. How many meetings do we have a day and a week, and how much time do we spend in meetings? And my plea is to help people have a better start to a meeting, and then a better middle, but importantly, a better close. And the starter meeting might be when you set up what we're trying to achieve and what we're doing, and take time to make sure everyone is on the same page. Take time to make sure that everyone thinks they're in the same meeting. Take time to make sure who is in the meeting and what they're doing there, and do they have to be there, and maybe they don't have to be there. But actually check in. So it's a very human, conscious skill of checking in and to set up the right environment at the beginning of a meeting.
Hmm.
The middle bits when you do the work, I'm not going to focus on that now, but that's what you're good at. It's doing the stuff of a meeting. What people are really, really bad at is closing a meeting well. And it might only take a couple of minutes, or take some time, or take 5 minutes. But what have we decided? What are we going to act on? What have we learnt about ourselves? What else needs to be said? And let's close. And there we are. It might take a few minutes, but what I see everywhere, meetings, conversations, initiatives, projects, is we're very good at sometimes we're good at starting stuff, and then we jump straight into the middle stuff, and things don't close very well. And by the end of the day, your poor little head has got so many open topics. It's like having a screensaver with too many apps open. But things don't close.
Hmm.
And if we paid more attention to that cycle, and I'm doing it with my voice now, slowing down, if we paid more attention to the rhythm and the natural cycle of life and slowed things down and finished things well, people could leave that meeting as a success and then walk, figuratively or in real life, walk calmly to the next meeting and start the next meeting. Really important. And the bees do that very well.
I think it's a really good and important call out because my experience specifically has been that we don't spend a lot of time on the ending of meetings, the wrap up, confirming people have the same understanding, confirming that, whatever the next steps, takeaways, whatever it is, there's not a lot of time spent on that. And it is often, a version of like, okay, well, that's time. We're done here. See you later. And people kind of move on, which is not a good end to a meeting at all. I have no doubt that there are at least 8 or 9 other lessons in your book that we could get into. But I want to be mindful and respectful of your time. So I'm going to ask the question, is there anything that we didn't get to or something from your book that you really want to share before we wrap up? Or potentially something that you shared that you want to emphasize or add on to before we get to the end of this?
No, I mean, Celine, thank you for your interest. It's a fun topic, and actually the metaphor, just learning about the bees is interesting, but it's a fun way of opening up conversations. And I'm just going to say two things about the book. First of all, each chapter was written, and then actually I thought, hang on, I've just written a chapter. Why have I written a chapter by myself? Because I never work by myself. It's part of a collaboration with clients or with colleagues. So each chapter I sent to an expert in the field and asked for their thoughts. And the book has therefore become a dialogue.
Mm.
So there's a chapter all about teamwork, and I sent the chapter to Professor John Leary Joyce, who said, Philip, thank you. This is thought provoking. Here's my thoughts as well. So the book is a dialogue. So at the end, it's actually 13 people. It's myself and 12 experts in the field, and that just makes it fun. The second thing is all of the proceeds from the book go to a charity. And the charity is called Bees for Development. And actually, they support families in developing countries to have bee businesses. pollen and honey and wax and candles, to make money to pay for their children's education. So the book is is just a joy. It's selling really well on Amazon. There's a website we'll give you a link to, bewisebook.com. But but it's a collaborative effort. It's a fun project. The book is great, and all of the money goes straight to the charity. So it's something that I'm really enjoying doing. And thank you for your interest.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for coming and sharing some of this with me and with our audience. Bees are fascinating. Clearly is my takeaway. Bees are fascinating. I want to learn more about bees in general. We will absolutely have a link to your website, to the book's website, bewisebook.com. It will be in the show notes. But I just want to say I love that the proceeds from this book are giving back to the world in such a meaningful way. I think that is incredibly honorable. And look at this wonderful, good human doing good things and actually walking the walk and not just talking the talk, Philip. Thank you for sharing some of your story and sharing your insight and for being a good human.
Thank you, Celine. Likewise, and let's spread the word. And it's one thought-provoking conversation at a time, isn't it?
Absolutely.